And I think that it's kind of a wider problem of rather, I think traditionally we do tend to think about it being an age-related thing, don't we?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that it really is an age-related thing, is it, Martin?
No, I mean, again, going back to this definition, what the FCA are saying, and I'm sure it's borne out by the experiences that advisors have had, is that vulnerability can occur at any age. It can be temporary, sporadic, or permanent. Clearly, there is a tendency for some specific aspects to occur sort of later on in life, but we can't generalise too much. And of course, you know, if you think about things like financial shock, loss of a job, or bereavement, loss of a spouse, all these sorts of things, falling into debt, things can happen at various stages of life, which may cause people to act or think differently than they otherwise might. So I think it is all encompassing and can occur at any time in life, really.
Yes. Marlene, what are the sorts of things that you might look for if a new client came to you to assess whether they might be vulnerable or not?
Well, I think that one of the problems is that the obvious group might be the older, over 60s, because then they start to have conditions that might affect them. And then there's what they call the older old group, aged over 80. So that people might think they're the most obvious vulnerable group, but as Martin said, it doesn't matter what age you are. You can be young, inexperienced, lacking in knowledge, and you would be classed as being part of a vulnerable group. You could be part of not having the requirements that most people have, such as armed forces coming back into the workforce, ex-offenders, recent immigrants. You can't speak the English language. So all of these people would be classed as vulnerable. So it is quite diverse, it's quite complex. What we look for, and we always, it's always helpful if somebody comes in with a partner or a family member. So recently we became aware of one of our clients having the early onset of Alzheimer's, and he had sufficient compos mentis to try and keep control. So any letters that we sent to them, he would look at them and wouldn't let his wife see them. So eventually she told us this. So we now have this system where whenever we send a letter, we send it solely to her, but we email her to say that the letter's been sent, because he would still open the mail.
Yeah.
And whenever he rings up, so he rang up the other week and he was a little bit incoherent. So we emailed her and said, look, your husband's rang up, this is what he said, and she's able to give us a direction. So it's that sort of support we can give to vulnerable clients, but it's being aware of it. That's the biggest problem.
Yes. Do you think that there is a concern with, obviously, with the regulator looking so closely, that this kind of affects quite a large proportion of the population? You know, you mentioned just a few. There was I was talking to an investment manager a few weeks ago, and he was saying that one of his clients just received a lottery win, and you know, even though they're in their 20s, because of their occupation, that it was just complete shock and surprise. You know, you never think you're going to win the lottery.
That's right.
I think, isn't it, statistically you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice, I think, than winning the lottery these days. And he found himself in a very vulnerable position, just not knowing what to do or who to turn to. So, you know, it's not just about the age, and you know, but how, Marlene, you have more of a background as well, don't you, in, you know, assessing personalities and supporting them from your previous lives, if you like, and occupations. Then, do you think that there is a concern from the financial planning population that they need to turn themselves into perhaps social workers, or to have extra qualifications to be able to pick up these things?
Well, I've always been very clear in giving anybody any guidance about doing lifestyle financial planning, as that you're not there to be a social worker. And I think the FCA paper points that out, and some of the banks have pointed out that you're not there to be a rescuer, you're there to support people and give them guidance. So if you start to go into that arena and you're not fully qualified and experienced, you shouldn't go there, really. You should alert the experts and liaise with them.
Yes.
I think it is a case of knowing where somebody's expertise has come to a point where things need to be referred on. And we talk about referrals in terms of different business types, where it might be, I don't know, equity release or long-term care or some specialist areas. But actually, I think you're right, it's wider than that to say, well, who else can we get involved? Is there any type of counselling, for example, that might be relevant from some of the other charitable organisations and things like that that clients might need to be referred to and things of that nature.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I was a probation officer many years ago, we always liaised with several departments, like the Department of Work and Pensions, Social Security, Social Services, NSPCC, various charities, Citizens Advice Bureau, just to help one particular person. So, you know, even if you think you are in the rescue business, you can't do it on your own.